Welcome to Voyage Daily Tech, the most important news personalized for you every day, supported by Voyage.com.
After listening to today's news, you'll know first, Nvidia declares the CPU the new AI bottleneck, pivoting with its Grace chip to challenge Intel and AMD's data center dominance. So we'll discuss why this strategic shift matters and what it means for the future architecture of the entire AI ecosystem. Second, Australian tech giants cut over 1,000 jobs citing AI, but evidence suggests it's AI washing that threatens the future talent pipeline. We'll analyse why this trend is a turning point and how it could affect the next generation of engineering and leadership roles. Third, following SVB's collapse, JPMorgan Chase onboarded 3 years' worth of startup clients in one weekend, sparking a war with fintechs. This discussion will reveal how this event connects to the larger battle between Wall Street and Silicon Valley for the innovation economy. Fourth, Apple's new repair-friendly MacBook Neo has a fatal flaw. Its soldered memory may render it obsolete for future on-device AI. Today, we'll take a closer look at this design trade-off and its implications for the long-term viability of Apple's local AI strategy. Fifth, a new wave of Patriot mobile carriers is booming by selling ideological alignment over data plans, creating a powerful political data asset. We'll explore how this affinity economy model could transform consumer tech and what it means for data privacy and political micro-targeting. The engine that powered the entire AI revolution is suddenly hitting a wall, and the company that built it, Nvidia, says the solution isn't what you think. A while back, we talked about CapEx going nuclear scale and Broadcom quietly arming the giants with custom silicon. Keep that in mind, because today's twist is about a very different bottleneck. For years, Nvidia's GPUs have been the hottest chips on the planet, but now the company is making a massive pivot. According to Nvidia's head of AI infrastructure, Ian Buck, the central processing unit, or CPU, is now becoming the bottleneck in the next wave of AI. And in the coming days at GTC, Nvidia is set to detail Agentic optimized CPUs building on Grace and introducing parts like the Vera CPU that are purpose-built to fix that choke point. What's often overlooked is that for years, the power of AI came from GPUs, or graphics processing units, doing massively parallel calculations all at once. Think of it like 1,000 tiny calculators working on one big math problem. The CPU, or central processing unit, was more like the project manager handing out tasks, but now that manager is getting overwhelmed and can't feed the calculators fast enough. We previously analysed how the highway connecting chips can jam up an interconnect bottleneck, and the latest development is that the traffic cop itself, the CPU, is now the limiting factor. This isn't about chatbots anymore, it's about agentic AI, systems that don't just answer questions but actively perform tasks. And that requires a different kind of power. Continuing our last discussion about custom silicon versus general purpose gear, the situation this time is somewhat different. The emphasis shifts from raw GPU throughput to tightly tuned CPUs that can orchestrate, schedule, and stream data to GPUs at blistering speed. And this new wave of AI requires a fundamental shift in chip design. For decades, the server world has been dominated by what's called x86 architecture, the foundation for Intel and AMD chips. But agentic AI needs something different, incredible power, efficiency, and scalability for constant always-on tasks. This is where a rival architecture called ARM comes in. ARM-based processors are known for being incredibly energy efficient, which is why they're in almost every smartphone. Now, that same efficiency is becoming critical in the data center, and it's a direct threat to Intel and AMD's long-held dominance. It also lines up with what sovereign scale buyers we discussed a while back have been optimizing for efficiency budgets and network scale, not just raw core counts. The opportunity is so huge that Bank of America predicts the CPU market could more than double to $60 billion by 2030. But the problem runs even deeper. The industry is now facing what one research firm calls a quiet supply crisis. Lead times for CPUs are stretching to 6 months, with prices jumping more than 10%. As one analyst put it, wafers don't grow on trees. There's a crunch across the entire industry. We said the arms race wasn't slowing down. Here's the receipt. Demand is outpacing the ability to build and package enough brains to run these systems. This supply crunch is a serious choke point that could slow down AI development for everyone, no matter how many GPUs they can get their hands on. Research shows that Intel's lead times for its most advanced server chips have stretched to 6 months, and they're having to ration them. AMD is also facing delays. A big part of the problem is a bottleneck in advanced packaging. the technology used to bundle multiple chiplets together into one powerful processor. We previously flagged the interconnect bottleneck across massive clusters. Advanced packaging is the other half of the same squeeze. If you can't build or wire it fast enough, performance on paper doesn't matter. This sets up a colossal power struggle. Nvidia, with its $4.4 trillion market cap, is invading the turf of CPU giants Intel and AMD. And the competition is already throwing punches. The head of data centers at AMD, Forrest Norrod, claims Nvidia's new chips are not well optimized for general purpose applications, a direct shot at their design. Meanwhile, remember, Broadcom isn't fighting this exact battle. It's charging ahead with custom ASICs and high-speed optics, catering to buyers who want a perfectly forged key for one lock. What's really striking here is that Norrod is hinting at a fundamental change in how we measure a chip's power. For years, the industry benchmark was dollars per core, more cores meant more power, but Nvidia is flipping that script. Their new Grace CPU has fewer cores, but it's designed for extreme single-threaded speed. The whole point isn't to run a million different apps, but to do one job perfectly, feed the GPU with data as fast as humanly possible. This challenges the very definition of what makes a data center processor valuable. While Intel and AMD dominate the market with over 80% share combined, Nvidia is playing a different game. It's building CPUs specifically designed to feed their own powerful GPUs and has already struck a deal with Meta for a large-scale deployment of its standalone CPUs. A few days ago, we mentioned reports that OpenAI is lining up Broadcom silicon, exactly the kind of hedging we'd expect in a world where some buyers want custom chips wired for their own models, while others bet on Nvidia's vertically tuned CPU plus GPU stack. This is a fascinating strategic choice by Meta. While giants like Amazon and Google are spending billions to design their own custom CPUs in-house, like Graviton and Axion, Meta chose to deploy Nvidia's Grace CPUs. The trade-off is clear. Building your own chip gives you total control and can be cheaper in the long run, but it takes years. By buying Nvidia's optimized solution, Meta gets to scale its AI infrastructure immediately, a massive advantage in this fast-moving race. And it contrasts neatly with Anthropic and OpenAI, tapping Broadcom for custom silicon, the same end goal of scale reached by very different roads. Nvidia's strategy is becoming clear. You see, by licensing its core technology called NVLink to rivals like Intel and ARM, Nvidia is licensing its NVLink technology to other companies. It's a brilliant frenemy strategy. It ensures that no matter who builds a CPU, Intel, AMD, or even a smaller player, the easiest and fastest way to connect it to the all-important GPU is through Nvidia's tech. This move helps make the CPU a commodity while ensuring their own high-margin GPUs remain the indispensable centerpiece of every single AI system. We previously highlighted Broadcom's networking and optical edge as a way to solve the data highway jam. NVLink Everywhere is Nvidia's counter, pulling more of that highway back under its control. So the pattern holds, the CapEx keeps escalating, the arms race isn't slowing, and the battlefield is widening from GPUs to the networks between them and now to the CPUs that feed them. Nvidia's bet is simple. If agentic AI is the future, then owning the manager that fuels the calculators matters just as much as owning the calculators themselves. So we've just talked about the massive hardware shifts needed to power the next wave of AI. Now, let's turn to the human side of that equation, where the same technology is being blamed for over 1,000 job cuts across Australia in just the past few months. Tech giants like Atlassian, Block, and WiseTech are shedding hundreds of employees, and some executives are being brutally honest about why. The CEO of software company WiseTech just went on the record with a statement that is an absolute bombshell, declaring the era of manually writing code as a core act of engineering is over. What he's really talking about is the rise of AI coding assistants like GitHub Copilot. Research from Microsoft shows these tools can make developers incredibly fast, completing tasks up to 55% quicker. So the job isn't necessarily disappearing, but it's changing. The future for many engineers might be less about writing every single line of code and more about directing, reviewing, and correcting the code that AI generates. It's a move from being a writer to being an editor. Atlassian CEO Mike Cannon-Brookes admitted it would be disingenuous to pretend AI doesn't change the mix of skills we need. Meanwhile, Afterpay's owner, Block, cut a reported 700 Australian jobs. However, if you zoom out, you'll see another layer to this. Some analysts are calling it AI washing. suggesting companies are just using artificial intelligence as a convenient excuse to justify layoffs that are really about financial pressure. A while back, we broke down how markets often reward companies that shrink in the name of AI. The same playbook we talked about with Atlassian and Block, and now we're seeing that logic show up in these local headlines. This AI washing playbook is often a short-term strategy to impress investors. The thinking is, we're not struggling, we're just becoming more efficient with futuristic tech. But the promised AI efficiencies often don't show up. A stunning report from Forrester found that over half of companies that cut staff for AI reasons later regretted it. The technology simply wasn't ready to pick up the slack. Continuing our last discussion about brittle rollouts, the out-of-distribution snafu where an AI misread new holiday labels and triggered weeks of overproduction, this is exactly why those savings failed to materialise. Without a human on the loop and real change management, the promised lift stalls, morale tanks, and the org backtracks. The evidence, we previously called out how markets popped on AI layoff headlines. Both Block and WiseTech had been struggling with their share prices dropping significantly. But after announcing the AI-driven job cuts, their stocks rebounded, Block shot up 20%, and WiseTech jumped 11%. And that positive stock jump is exactly what incentivizes this AI washing behavior. But here's a twist. More recent analysis from Goldman Sachs shows the trend is flipping. On average, companies announcing AI-related layoffs are now seeing their stock prices fall as the market grows skeptical of whether the cuts are truly about innovation or just a sign of deeper trouble. One human resources advisor at Gartner is deeply skeptical, stating their research found only 1% of recent job cuts were the direct result of AI productivity gains. He suspects something else is going on, but the impact goes even deeper, hitting the bottom of the ladder. Companies have told researchers they are shedding junior staff at increasing rates. Recruiters confirm that smaller firms in consulting and marketing are no longer hiring interns for short-term projects. They're just using an AI tool instead. And as we noted a while back, inside the org, this kind of top-down AI swap can feel like whiplash. Tools replaced overnight, training burdens spiking, and productivity dipping before it improves, if it improves. The scale of this is staggering and creates a huge problem for the future. A recent report found that a jaw-dropping 93% of organizations expect to hire fewer entry-level roles in the coming years, specifically because of AI. Entry-level jobs are where people learn the ropes and become the senior experts of tomorrow. If you automate away the training ground, where does your next generation of leaders come from? Which also means you risk losing the very human-on-the-loop talent that keeps these fragile systems on the rails. It's a question that very few companies have a good answer for right now. This corporate strategy is fueling a wave of anxiety across the country, and the numbers prove it. A recent survey found that nearly 1 in 3 Australians now believe their job will eventually disappear because of AI. Speaking of corporate strategy and market perception, another major player made a huge move during a moment of crisis. During the chaos of Silicon Valley Bank's collapse, JPMorgan Chase onboarded 3 years' worth of new clients in a single weekend. On March 9th, 2023, as SVB was losing $42 billion in deposits, regulators called JPMorgan with an urgent question: did they want to buy the failing bank? JPMorgan's leaders looked at the numbers and said no. The reason? Thousands of panicked startups were already flocking to them in a massive flight to safety. This presents a fascinating duality though. Does concentrating the entire startup world's banking within an even larger, too-big-to-fail institution actually make the system safer? The SVB collapse showed us the danger of having a single point of failure. Now, the innovation economy is shifting its risk to what regulators call a global systemically important bank, or GSIB. The upside is that these banks, like JPMorgan, have incredibly robust infrastructure. The downside, their sheer size and interconnectedness mean that if they ever faced a crisis, the fallout could be catastrophic on a global scale. It's a classic double-edged sword. Here's where the situation takes a more complex turn. JPMorgan executive Doug Petno saw a massive opportunity. He went to the board and declared there's a vacuum in the market. Instead of just absorbing the fallout, they decided to attack. JPMorgan went on a hiring spree, snatching key talent from the ruins of SVB and later acquiring another wounded tech-focused bank, First Republic. And believe it or not, this hiring spree wasn't just about getting more bankers. It was a strategic cultural move. SVB was famous for its deep integration with the tech world. It understood the mindset of founders. JPMorgan, the very symbol of Wall Street, knew it couldn't just offer stability. It had to import that Silicon Valley DNA. By hiring key SVB executives, they were trying to bridge a massive cultural gap in risk tolerance, speed, and relationship style to win the genuine trust of the tech world. The results were immediate. JPMorgan doubled its revenue from startup banking in 2023. It quadrupled its client base in the sector to nearly 12,000, served by 550 bankers. Now, the Wall Street giant, armed with a tech budget of nearly $20 billion, is in a street fight with nimble competitors like Mercury and Ramp. Now, get this, that nearly $20 billion tech budget isn't just for building better apps. JP Morgan is using its new position as banker to the startups as a source of corporate intelligence. By analysing the financial and operational data of its new tech clients, the bank gets a first-hand look at emerging technologies, which helps inform its own massive investments. It's a powerful feedback loop, but it raises some serious questions about client confidentiality and conflicts of interest. They are battling to win over founders who, according to Petno, expect to open an account online in under 15 minutes or they're gone. This is the Goliath's dilemma. Can a massive, heavily regulated institution truly match the speed and user experience of a venture-backed startup? Actually, it's an incredibly difficult challenge. Big banks often run on old, complex legacy systems where even small changes can take ages. The fintechs they're competing against were built from the ground up to be fast and user-friendly. JP Morgan has the money, but it's fighting against its own bureaucratic weight and a culture built on stability, not radical experimentation. The mission is to build a system that can serve a startup from its first seed check all the way to a public offering and beyond. So, how are they planning to handle that first seed check part? It's a huge shift. Traditionally, banks don't bet on early stage startups. That's the job of venture capitalists who use intuition and networks. But JP Morgan is deploying advanced AI models to analyze data and predict a startup's creditworthiness, essentially acting like a VC to identify winning bets early on. This could completely reshape how startups get funded, creating a new, powerful JPM-backed tier in the ecosystem. JP Morgan's ultimate vision is to become the one-stop shop for the entire innovation economy. As Petno put it, their message to founders is now crystal clear. Once you're onboarded, you can never outgrow JP Morgan, from unicorn all the way to a magnificent seven. And speaking of the Magnificent Seven, one of its biggest members, Apple, just released its most repairable laptop in over a decade. But there's a critical design choice hidden inside that could cripple its future. The new entry-level MacBook Neo is being called a major shift for the company. Repair experts at iFixit took it apart and found that for the first time since 2014, Apple is using simple screws instead of glue for key parts like the battery and keyboard. It's a huge win for repairability, designed to compete with easily fixed Chromebooks in schools. This isn't just a simple swap from glue to screws. According to Apple's own design executives, they've developed a new manufacturing process for the Neo. Instead of carving the laptop's body from a solid block of aluminum, which is wasteful, they now start with an aluminum extrusion that's heated and pressed into shape before fine-tuning. This new method reduces material usage by a staggering 50%, which is a big deal for both cost and the environment. It seems this new, more efficient process is what makes using screws practical. But here's the twist. Despite the praise, iFixit gave the MacBook Neo a repair score of only 6 out of 10. For perspective, competitors like Lenovo have machines that score 9s and 10s. The reason for the low score reveals a critical conflict in Apple's strategy. That 6 out of 10 score highlights a huge debate in the tech world, the difference between repairability and upgradability. iFixit's scoring system heavily favours being able to easily replace a broken part, like a battery or screen, but it doesn't really score a device's ability to be upgraded with better components over time. This is a totally different philosophy from a company like Framework, which designs its laptops to be both repairable and fully upgradable, earning it top marks. The computer's memory, its 8 gigabytes of DRAM, is permanently soldered to the main processor. This means it is physically impossible to upgrade the memory. Ever, what you buy is what you're stuck with. Apple calls this unified memory. And there's a reason for it. By soldering it directly to the processor, they can achieve incredible speed and efficiency because the data doesn't have to travel far. But that performance comes at a huge cost. Flexibility. The trade-off is that you are locked in forever. This decision brings both benefits and comes with inherent risks, especially when we talk about running AI locally. The CEO of iFixit, Kyle Wiens, points out that as artificial intelligence applications grow more complex, they will demand more memory. Apple has been promoting the privacy benefits of running AI locally on your own device, but this non-upgradable design directly challenges that vision. When we talk about running AI locally, we're talking about large language models, and these models are incredibly memory hungry. Research shows that even a moderately sized model, say 13 to 14 billion parameters, needs around 16 to 20 gigabytes of memory just to run smoothly. That's already double what the base MacBook Neo comes with. Larger models, they can require 32, 64, or even more gigabytes. So by soldering 8 gigs of memory, Apple is creating a device that might be physically repairable for years, but could become functionally obsolete in just a couple of years, unable to run the very software Apple is pushing as the future. This is a new kind of planned obsolescence driven by software, not hardware failure. And if you think this is just about one budget laptop, think again. Wiens delivered a stunning critique stating this design choice isn't an isolated issue. His final word on the matter: I would argue this is a flaw across Apple's entire Mac product line. We were just talking about a product's technical trade-offs, but what if the product itself is secondary to the message? A phone company is now charging its customers $1 more than a competitor's unlimited plan for only a single gigabyte of data. And believe it or not, this isn't a mistake. It's a business model. This is a phenomenon that researchers call political consumerism, and it's part of a larger trend called the affinity economy. The idea is that for some people, expressing their political identity through their purchases is more important than the price or even the quality of the product. They are knowingly and willingly paying what's been called an identity tax to support companies that align with their values. Welcome to the booming market of so-called Patriot phone plans, a world where politics and patriotism are the main selling points. It goes way beyond Trump Mobile. And while this corner of the market is getting a lot of attention, the basic business model isn't entirely new. For decades, a progressive company called Credo Mobile has done something similar. Since 1985, they've donated over $95 million to progressive causes like the ACLU and Planned Parenthood by turning their customers' phone bills into a recurring political donation. So what we're seeing now is that same playbook being used with explosive growth on the conservative side. Take Patriot Mobile, which bills itself as America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, a claim that is factually untrue. For that $26 a month plan with just 1 gigabyte of data, the company says it contributes millions to organizations like Turning Point USA and CPAC. It even sells Charlie Kirk hoodies and launched a children's book series called Patriot Pals, featuring a bald eagle with the company logo on its chest. Then there's Pure Talk. It's been endorsed by conservative pundits like Sean Hannity and Ben Shapiro, who ran paid ads asking, why do we keep giving our money to woke corporations like Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, who care more about selling wokeness than wireless? And the offerings get even more specific. A carrier called Radiant Mobile, which hasn't even launched yet, promises network-level content filtering and uses an AI-generated Snow White to narrate Bible stories. So what does network-level content filtering actually mean? It's an important distinction. Unlike parental controls that you install on your own phone, network-level filtering happens back at the company's servers. The carrier itself decides what it considers harmful and blocks it before it ever reaches your device. This means the company, not the user, curates your internet experience, which raises huge questions about censorship and who gets to be the gatekeeper of information. Another charity mobile greets you on its homepage with a screen-filling image of a fetus, declaring itself the pro-life phone company that donates 5% of your bill to pro-life charities. While these smaller carriers lease their network capacity from the same woke giants they criticize, they offer a clear alternative. You might be wondering, why would AT&T or T-Mobile let these smaller companies use their networks just to turn around and attack them? Well, the answer is simple: money. A lot of it. The big carriers make a fortune by leasing their excess network capacity in bulk. These are called wholesale agreements. For context, AT&T signed a 10-year deal with Dish Network worth at least $5 billion. For the big guys, it's a massive, low-effort revenue stream, and the financial benefit often outweighs any risk to their brand. The core conflict isn't about network quality, it's a battle for ideological alignment. That's because the business model goes even deeper than just donations. By attracting a highly specific demographic, these carriers are essentially creating a valuable data asset. Like all carriers, they can legally collect data on call records, internet usage, and location. For a political organisation, a concentrated list of customers who have already self-identified with a certain ideology is incredibly powerful. This data could potentially be used for highly specific political micro-targeting, fundraising, or voter mobilisation efforts, not unlike the methods we saw in the Cambridge Analytica scandal. From children's books to AI-narrated scripture, this new wave of carriers is betting that for their target customer, the message is more important than the data plan. The numbers show that for many, the price of patriotism is a premium worth paying.
That's it for today on Voyage Daily Tech. Follow, share, and stay tuned for daily updates coming your way tomorrow.